Well, good evening, and thank you for having me here. Thank you, VK Singh, for your introduction. I would say that up until 35 years ago, countries who are fighting terrorists in the Middle East or West Asia are used to define two basic conditions in those fighting against terrorists. The first condition was tools, whether it's a pistol, a gun, hand grenade, knife. And the second intention to use it against people. Only obeying those two basic conditions as a security man, according to the law in every country, you are allowed to open fire in order to block the terrorist, and even if it's needed, to kill him. At the 70s, at the 80s, passenger aircraft were hijacked by terrorists using guns, pistols, hand grenades. And in many cases, in airports and other places, attacks were foiled or not by the counterterrorism troops, police, or other security men. At that time, we know that there were very tight connections and cooperation between terror organizations. And as Mr. Akbar said yesterday, it was tight connections between terror organizations and less connections between countries who are fighting terrorists. If we all remember when the Palestinian terror organization at that time, together with Badr Meinhof from Germany, together with the Red Japanese Army, in some cases under the leadership of the arch-terrorist Carlos the Jackal, carried out very tough terror attacks. But since then, we've seen another dimension of terror was added to the battery of terror activities. And that's the system of suicide bombings. We haven't seen it in the Middle East for a long time. We heard about it in other countries, even here in the central part of Asia. But in the west side of Asia, we started to see it only at the beginning of the 80s. It's very important because suicide bombers, you see none of the two basic conditions. You don't see the tool because they are putting the bombs on a vest or any other device on their body. And you don't see intentions. I haven't seen one case that a security man opened fire towards a suicide bomber or a potential suicide bomber that he suspected him to be a suicide bomber. As a matter of fact, I remember only one case in London in 2004, post the terror attacks at the tubes in London, when a Brazilian guy came to the station, jumped above the entrance, and a policeman, thinking he is a terrorist who is trying to run and to detonate himself, opened fire, killed him, and it came out a mistake. When we deal with suicide bombers in our region, it's very problematic. First of all, the majority I mean more than 95% of the suicide bombers are not from the hardcore of the terror organization. There are almost last-minute recruitments. You can find males, females, adults, teenagers, majority between 17 to 24, married, bachelors, smart people, students, or illiterate people. It's not the job of miserable people only, unlike what we sometimes thought. But all of them are very fanatic. I remember a case when a suicide bomber ran towards a group of Israelis, soldiers and civilians, detonated himself, with 10-kilogram explosives on his back. Thank God the TNT explosives didn't explode, just for a technical failure. And what was exploded was only the detonator itself. The suicide bomber was the only person to get injured, and he lost consciousness and was taken to a hospital nearby. The interrogator who went to the hospital to question him the minute he opened an eye, waited a few hours, and then he opened his eyes, saw someone is staring above him, and he asked him, "Hey man, do you know where you are?" He looked at him and said, "Definitely, I'm in heaven." He said, "You are not in heaven. You are in hospital. Both starts with an H, but it's definitely not heaven." And they started an argument, the interrogator and the terrorist, about the real location. Finally, the interrogator said, "All right, let's start from the beginning. Who am I?" He looked at him and said, "You? You are a bloody Israeli." The interrogator knew how to bite his lips. And he said, "Yes, I'm an Israeli. I'm even Jewish. But tell me, are the Jews in heaven?" He looked and said, "Hey man, you're right. No Jews in heaven. So I'm possibly in hospital." And he started to pour information. That's a kind of fanaticism that we thought it's only to poor people. No. We had another case with a student who was recruited in order to carry out a bomb in Jerusalem, to kill himself in a bus with a devastating belt. We caught the commander of the cell, and he gave us the whole story, that there is a student who smuggled a belt with a woman in Jerusalem. She put it in a hidden place, and he has to collect it and to carry out the bomb or the mission in a bus in Jerusalem, either on Sunday or Monday, but definitely not on Tuesday, which is very odd for us, but terrorists. A few days later, we caught the student. After a while, he gave us the accurate location of the belt. We went with him, we found the belt, and we exploded the bomb. Now we got back to the center, and we asked, "All right, what's the story about Sunday, Monday, Tuesday?" The student. He said, "That's very simple. Sunday, Monday, I have nothing special in university. Tuesday, I have an exam." And trust me, even if you are well trained, sometimes it frustrates you, or surprise you, or both. Terrorists in the West Asia are not guerrilla fighters. I can assure you that in many cases, when we heard that they are trying to carry out terror attacks only against security soldier or policemen, but civilians and citizens are a very tempting target, because it's very easy to find them. It's very easy to hit them. Normally they don't respond with fire, and civilians, in the eyes of terrorists all over, in West Asia and I believe in other parts of the world, civilians have dual purpose. One, to be the targets for those terrorists to hit. Never mind if it's a bomb, if it's a car bomb, if it's rockets. Try to imagine that we are facing, during the last decade, just from Gaza Strip, 15,000 rockets towards Israeli cities. Inside the Green Line. Forget about the territories, whatever. And the second goal that citizens have to play, in eyes of terrorists, is to be the human shields of terrorists. We see it all over. We see it today in Iraq. We see it in Syria. We see it in Lebanon. We see it in the Palestinian Authority. We see it all over, even in Yemen. Terrorists surround themselves with this human shield. It's very easy. nobody will say no. Because he knows if he says no, he becomes a target. And it's very easy. At the first Intifada in Israel, 600 people got killed by terrorists. 600 people in Gaza Strip. 97% of them were innocent people. They got killed for blaming them for collaborating with Israel. Only 3% has some kind of relations with Israel. So 97% out of 600 people got killed for nothing. And I know that as counterterrorism organizations, and here are sitting experts for so many countries, including from India, who know something about how to fight terrorists, how to confront terror attacks. And we all know terrorists are activating when they can and when it pays off. The problem is that countries who are fighting terrorists, who are determined in fighting terrorists, they have to fight terrorists all the way, all the time, 24/7. Because there is no fair play against terrorists. Never think about fighting in a fair play against terrorists. It doesn't work. If you try to go with the passion of terrorists and with the pace of their activities, you are going to lose the war. You have to be on a constant fighting against terrorists, because the secret is how to take terrorists from 90% of the time to carry out terror attacks and 10% of the time to survive, to hide themselves. You have to change the timetable. So 90% of the time they will be in Iran. They know that you are on their tail. And only 10% of the time they will be able to carry out terror attacks. That's the first winning, the first victory of terror gangs. And the second point, there's no fair play against terrorists. Sometimes, and I'm sure that you've heard it from your people, some people say, well, it's just 2-3 terrorists are hiding in a building or in the bushes, armed with Kalashnikov rifles and hand grenades. Let's bring a group of 10 soldiers, 10 policemen, let them do the job. At the end of the clash, 2 terrorists will get killed, but you might lose 1 or 2 of your own. That's why whenever it's needed, I recommend you all. I recommended my people many years. If it's needed, it's authorized to fight with an F-16 jet against a terrorist and arch terrorist with an M16 rifle. If that's the only way. Because otherwise, if you are seeking for a fair play, maybe you are going to catch the terrorist or to kill him, but you are going to lose your own people with no need. Now, I know that we've heard, and probably you've heard in many of your cases, the slogan, fighting terrorists, it's fighting a barrel that has no bottom, a bottomless barrel. Or to fight terrorists, it's like to empty the ocean with a spoon. If you have such people, right away, move them to another job. They're not in the right position. Because I remember in 2002, we had 450 fatalities, mainly civilians, from suicide bombers. 3,000 people got injured in 1 year. We had a waiting list of more than 400 names of suicide bombers. Some people are getting frustrated from it. How do we get 400 names in captivity? Nobody of them is arch-terrorist. I'm not speaking about the generators of terror, I'm not speaking about the commanders. I'm not speaking about those who are manufacturing the bombs. Just the suicide bombers, male, females, at the age of 17, 18. These are not targets for targeted killings. These are people you want to detain them to prevent any suicide bombing by themselves. What are you going to do when you have a true story about a woman from Gaza Strip who got a special permit to go to a hospital inside Israel as a humanitarian step to treat herself by radiation because she suffered cancer? After 2 sessions of radiation, she was recruited by a terror organization, Hamas. She got a belt with explosives, and they told her to detonate herself in the hospital. But they added and said, if the metal detector at the crossing is going to ring, detonate yourself on the spot. So she said, but I'm crossing with some other people from Gaza Strip, Palestinians. They're going to get killed. They said, as long as you're killing Israelis, never mind if some people from Gaza will get killed. So she asked, but why it's supposed to ring at the metal detector? You told me no shrapnels in the bomb. So they answered, you're right. But the sensitivity of the metal detector is unknown to us. And the detonator itself is still made. And if it rings, you have to detonate yourself on the spot. So she said, wait a minute. I broke my arm a few months ago. In the surgery, they put me a piece of metal to strengthen the bone. Is it going to ring? They said, definitely. Thank you for updating us. They took her to a clinic, opened her arm, took out the piece of metal and closed it. You are not going to need it anymore. Thank God we got previous information. And she's one out of 400 names that we saved her life. We saved many Israelis' life. We saved many Palestinians' life. And it's just one case out of hundreds. So frustration is not a characteristic of counterterrorism people. I know that we are always preferring to have terrorists to be killed. I know the slogan, if you can't heal it, kill it. It sounds very good, but it's not effective. You don't have information from a dead man, as far as I know. You do have information from a detained person, a detained terrorist. And killing is the second best, it's not the first best. The first best is having terrorists in captivity, questioning with them, taking the information, translating it into action items, sending it to the field, foiling other people, plans, laboratories, factories of bombs, and so on and so on. Sometimes it's much easier to target a terrorist. But if you can take him, questioning with them, there's no better way, and I'm sure that many of you will agree with me, there's no better way that I've seen in my life, no better way to get the whole picture about the terror infrastructure better than you can get from a detainee arch-terrorist. And I know the slogan, they don't speak, they are lonely wolves, I heard the name. I haven't met lonely wolves. I've met lonely dogs. And those who speak Arabic, they know the difference between a wolf and a dog. And that's why I think we as countries get rid of the term lonely wolves. The one who drove the truck in Nice and the one who drove the truck in Berlin, he's not a lonely wolf. He's a lonely dog. And I know it's not easy to target such a person or to find him before. But that should be the aim of any counterterrorism apparatus, not to go the easy way, but go the hard way. Try to extend it. Get the person. Learn from him. That's the way you can, right at the beginning, get a full picture. And from a full picture, you will be able to thwart more and more terrorists, more and more plans, more and more generators of terror, more and more builders of bombs, and so on and so on. In security, you have basically two rings of security. First ring is intelligence. That's supposed to give you the previous information to foil the attack. But unfortunately, we do know, mainly the people who are sitting here, that in 90% of the cases, we are failing to bring the right information on time. So then we have built the second ring, which is the physical ring of security. That's the most expensive ring because it contains people, guards, detectors, metal detectors, sniffers, CT, whatever. We are traveling all over, and we know what does it mean, the second ring in airports, in malls, and any other places, even at the hotel that we are sitting now. The physical ring is deterring, is preemptive, and when you get the attack, it at least minimizes the damage because guards open fire, and even if the terrorists have started to commit the crime, at least you can stop them, block them before they are killing more people or injuring more people. There's only one ring that we have to add in case of passenger aircraft or any other aircraft. Because I know that we are all post 9/11. It's only less than 16 years. But I'm not sure that all lessons from 9/11 were learned. Courageously, if you analyze 9/11, it's 19 terrorists who came aboard 4 passenger aircraft with nothing but bad intentions. There's no way to detect bad intentions on the line. Even one person to detect bad intentions, it takes more than 1 day. The bomb was supplied by the company, or if you want, by the government. A huge bomb. There's no way to bring down the Trade Center by a bomb dropped from an F-16 combat jet, even if it's a ton of explosives. Each tower was brought down by a carrier, 767, with 50-ton fuels with a steering on it. The dream of any suicide bomber, any terrorist. So the third thing says that if you're not a security man inside the airplane, you're irrelevant. And had we had on those 4 passenger planes in 9/11, on each one, air marshals, no 9/11. No 9/11. I've learned in my life, to be transparent, I was an air marshal 40-something years ago. My trainer was an American guy who put a sign above the entrance to the training center that says a very famous saying that was said by the legendary Samuel Colt. And it says, "Fear no man, no matter size, count on me, I'll equalize." And I trust it. And one of the problems is that terrorists have a very bad habit. They repeat successful terror attacks. Therefore, remember, 9/11 might repeat itself. 9/11 might repeat itself. And those countries who are thinking about saving money instead of putting guards inside, think twice about it. The US, if I'm not wrong, spent till today trillions of dollars post 9/11 because of 9/11. Only Afghanistan took almost $1.5 trillion, let alone the TSA improvements, etc., etc. Let alone the damage. I'm not speaking about people. I don't know how to evaluate 2,700 killed people. The last point that I want to focus during my talk is about states of terror. Because states of terror, it's the way to empower terror. We all remember Iraq and Libya at the 70s and the 80s. When Carlos the Jackal captured 75 ministers and delegates in Vienna, it was backed, supported, and launched by Iraq under Saddam Hussein at that time. It's interesting, it was on 21st December 75. In 21st December 88, Libya sent her terrorists to put a bomb in the Panam 103 flight that crashed above Lockerbie with 270 killed people. Both countries are not anymore the countries that we used to have them before. But at the beginning of the 80s, we've got a third state of terror, which today is the only or the main state of terror in the west side of Asia, Iran. It runs 5 proxies of terrorists: Hezbollah in Lebanon and Syria, Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad in Gaza, Houthis in Yemen, and another militia. Not easy to know that you have a state of terror, a regional superpower who is running 5 segments, 5 proxies. Even though that 19 Arab countries declared less than a year ago that Hezbollah is a terror organization. It never happened before. 19 out of 22 Arab countries in our region declared Hezbollah a terror organization. The only 3 who didn't do it, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. The 3 are dominated by Iran today. I think that we as countries, as determined countries, who are committed to fight terrorists, we shouldn't leave any safe haven for terrorists. Terrorists must know that they are in Iran forever. They must know that every crossing within the country, let alone between countries, is a soft point for terrorists. We all know that when you are in front of the state at the passport control, you are by yourself. Even if you go with your wife and family, at the window you are by yourself. If you are a terrorist, you are standing by yourself in front of the state. Because the border control employee, he is with the whole equipment that enables him to decide, you are a terrorist or not. And the best way that I remember that enables you to catch such terrorists in crossings is by sharing information. And the more you share, the more you have. And determined countries will win the war against terrorists. Because I've met here in India yesterday a group of students. I asked them, who was Carlos the Jackal? Nobody knows. They didn't hear about the name. In 5-10 years from now, if you ask students all over the world, who was Osama bin Laden? They will ask you, Osama who? I believe that in 10-15 years, when you'll ask about Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, they'll say, well, Abu Bakr who lives in Baghdad maybe. So don't give up. We do know how to fight terrorists. We do know how to win the war against terrorists. Thank you very much.